Welcome, fellow Wasteland survivors. I'm Dean. Thanks for stopping in, hanging out with me for today's video on Let's Build a Trading Post with tips and tricks. Now, I'm really excited about today's video because it gives me the opportunity to show how our team's trading post was built. Now, it is a little bit elaborate, and you may not be interested in building something like this. But the tips that we're going to see in today's video could give you a lot of good ideas or inspire you to build something in your trading post, like this door that has no door jamb and still works. Well, sorry to say, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Let's Build tips and tricks video, not a walkthrough video. So we're not going to see very much of the build completed. But in case you are interested in seeing that, the link for that video will be flashing somewhere on the screen, and you can also find a link for it in the description below. So we've got a lot to do. Let's get busy. I've already placed the camp down as close to White Springs train station as I can get it. It's about 10 steps in front of that blue container. So that means all that junk back there is going to take up about 40% of our build area. Also, another thing I ran into is we can't actually put foundations directly over the railroad tracks. So I had to change the build designer idea up a little bit. What I did to start off with is placed a concrete foundation down over the railroad tracks, and what I want to do is line up this corner right in front of us and the corner far away with the edge of the railroad ties. Hopefully I can get it really straight by doing that. So we'll add a few more concrete floors in, or foundations in. Then once we've got it straight, we can go ahead and move our first foundation to the right until we can get the left-hand corner into the center of the railroad track. That should split it evenly for both sides. Okay, looks good. Alright, now that most of the foundations are in, I'd like to add the red rocket sign in right between these two foundations that are pointing at one another. Use it kind of like an archway for an entrance into the trading post. Alright, now we need to step up into the trading post area, and we'll use one of these concrete foundations to do it. So we're just taking a couple away so we can freely move this one up and down and place it where we'd like to. Now it's a little bit low. We can still step up onto the other foundations, but to make it look better, we'll go ahead and add in some concrete steps a little later on in the build. Okay, next, let's put some stairs in, and we'll snap some floors to that to help us mark where our second story is going to be. For our walls, we're going to use these eave pieces and some half walls above them. Now, I'm sure you guys and gals are familiar with this style of wall. We've used it a couple of times in other videos. I really like this style, and I think it's exactly what we need for this build. This next tip and trick is actually a play off of something you may already know. First thing we're going to do is snap in a wall, and then we're going to change it into a doorway. Now, we could have actually put the doorway in first. It doesn't really matter. I'm just showing, just in case you don't know, that you can actually change the variances of a wall or certain walls. Now we'll go ahead and snap a door in. Also keep this in mind, this tip and trick works with any of the doors. Now we'll go ahead and change our doorway back into a wall. Once we do that, we're able to freely move the wall out of the way, and it leaves our door floating in the air. Now, don't be a baboose like me. Pro tip, make sure you put your door in the right way so it opens the right way. And then we can snap a couple of these metal posts into the floor above our head, and that really gives us a nice looking frame around the door. This next trick we've seen several times in other videos. What we're going to do is put a half a wall down so that way we can snap a ceiling to it. My idea here is to run an eave down the side of the stairs, and it'll kind of give us a pretty cool little ending to the half a wall that's running right there on the side of it. Now we can go ahead and take the ceiling out, the half a wall, and our eave is floating in the air. Now we can take another eave, flip it around, and that should give us a pretty cool look to the end of our building here on the first floor. And yeah, that really looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. And now we got to reduplicate it on the other side. So let's do that in fast motion. Okay, now that our buildings are done, I'd like to connect them together with a floor on the second story. So what we're doing here is we're just moving some of these half floors around so that we can snap some railings or the half railings onto the end of them. When we are finished with that, we'll replace the floors back in where they go. And the idea that I have for this area is to put a lounge and some musical instruments right up against the red rocket sign. Use it as a background. To create the counter for the front of our stores, we just use some of these shelves. And as you can see, if we flip 2 around on the ends, 3 in the middle, it fits perfectly from one metal post to the other. We just use the floors to help us line them up. Now what I'd like to do is use the same idea of the shelving, but do it up above right underneath the floor. So we'll go ahead and pull out one of the metal posts, but we'll leave these two metal posts in because we'll need them to line our conduit up to. Now what I've done is I've set a conduit on top of this cabinet, and I've lined it up the best that I can. It is a little bit crooked, but it's not going to matter too much because we can adjust the cabinet if we need to. But I've got it as close to the edges as I possibly can, so that way it's nice and straight in between our two metal posts. Now I'll just go ahead, grab the cabinet and bring it over, and I'll try to line this up with our floor to help get us straight in there. Now, as we could see when that conduit was sitting on the cabinet, it wasn't quite straight. So I did have to adjust this 2 or 3 times. To do that, we have to take the metal posts out because the conduits won't snap in with the metal posts in build order. So if we take the metal posts out, we can put the conduits in, and then the metal posts will snap back into their original positions just fine. And we'll put this metal post in, and then we'll see that we're actually off a little bit, and I do need to readjust it again. I want to get that conduit up against that metal post as tight as I can. Now it takes 1.5 conduit pipes to go from one end to the other. So we'll put a conduit junction down on the floor and we'll snap those full length conduits onto it. Now we'll take a couple of cabinets and we'll line them up with the edge of the conduit piping to get it as straight as we can. Once we've done that, we can actually get it to set on top of the conduit pipe itself. Now once I've gotten this lined up, we're going to have little gaps on the ends where we had other shelving down below. Now we could do the same shelf up here on top as well, but I elected to use plants instead. Alright, now that we've got our shelves on our conduit piping, we can go ahead and grab them and snap them up to the conduit that we have sitting on top of the cabinet. Alright, now if none of this is really making sense to you, that's okay. We've got your back. Somewhere on the screen flashing right now is our tips and tricks video all about conduits. And after this video, you may want to go watch that one. It could help you better understand what we're doing here. Alright, now that we've got everything in, we can go ahead and put our metal posts in, and we have one more shelf to put in, and it'll go in above this cabinet. Now we have to use the cabinet because the shelf won't actually set on top of the conduit without something underneath of the conduit. Now it's not setting on that object, it just needs it to register. So that's the only reason that we're using the cabinet right now to put this shelf in. And once we get this thing lined up, we can go ahead and take our cabinet out, and there is our storefront. Yeah, I like that. Looks good. Now, to go over the door, super simple. We'll just pull the conduit that's over the door out, put it on our junction, and we'll repeat by putting a new shelf up on it. We'll try to make it as even as we can, and you may have to adjust this a time or two, so that way it's matching and even with the other shelves that are up there. And then bang, there we go. Now we can just go ahead, put the rest of our metal posts in, and our storefront is basically complete. We've just got one more shelf to put in right there in between those two metal posts. Okay, one final thing left to build before we run the electrical, and that's the sign. Now this may look extremely complicated, but trust me, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't. What I did is I took and added on an extra foundation to the pre-existing foundation and then lowered it to the ground. We added on a ladder and 2 floors with a half a floor that is connecting them together. And if you notice, these 2 floors look like what the foundations looked like when we first started the build. They're right in the middle of the railroad track. Then we just snapped on 2 metal posts right in the middle. Really simple, really easy. Alright, now we need to put up a half a wall as the front of our sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin one of our foundations around on the side, and we're going to try to line this up manually. This is going to take 4 or 5 tries to get this to line up with our sign. But we'll add on a ladder, we'll put on 2 floors, and then we'll be able to see how close we are or far away we are from our metal posts. And once we've got that up there, we can see it needs to go a little to the left, and it definitely needs to go closer to the metal posts. So after, like I said, a few times of adjusting, we finally get it just right. As you can see, our foundation's quite a ways away from where it was. We snap on our ladder, our 2 floors, and then we'll jump up there and take a look and see just how close we are. Now, the reason we need a floor to match up with the metal posts is so that we can snap a wall onto it. It looks like it's a little too far, but it's not, because the wall actually sets on the floor. Now we can go ahead, add on a ceiling. Once we've done that, we can go ahead, add on an eave. What we're doing is we're creating a new anchor point for a wall to go up. So we'll take the ceiling out, we'll take the wall out, we'll also take the floor out. The floor is what was supporting the wall, and we need it to set up there by itself. So we'll put the ceiling or the roof back in, and then we'll go get the half a wall that we want to use, snap that to the ceiling, and there we go. Looks pretty good. Now all we have to do is go ahead and store the ceiling and the eave, and we can put everything else away. And that's how easy the sign was to make. It looks complicated, it looks hard, but because we spent the time in the beginning of the build to line it up straight along the railroad tracks, it allowed us to put that sign in that easy. Okay, time to put our electrical in. Now we've added a conduit to the back of our sign because we're going to have neon lettering and probably some of the flashing strobe lights up. We've also put a conduit on the back of our building. Now what I'm going to try to do is run the wiring in a way that you can't really see it. And to do that, we're going to have to glitch the wiring through some of these objects. Now the idea on how to do this is really simple, but doing it is a little bit more complicated. The way that this works is when you connect a wire between 2 objects, one of those 2 objects needs to be moved or snapped to another location so that the wire is not being hindered by another object. Once you've done that, you can actually move that object anywhere you want or snap it where you want, and the wire will run through it. So the whole point is to get 2 snap points for an object that you've got a wire connected to. That's why we've got a ceiling up. That way we can turn it, rotate it, move it to a new area, snap it a second time. Now I couldn't get it to snap on the sign twice, so we took out one of the eaves and just went ahead and snapped it back into our build. As you can see, the wire is still connected to it, so that means now I can move this ceiling anywhere I want to, as long as it'll snap, and that wire will run through anything in between it. So we put the ceiling back on the sign. We're going to go ahead and put another ceiling on top of our build because we need to put our eave back up. We won't be able to snap the eave up if the ceiling's in because the wire will be in the way. Now this will happen sometimes when you're building these days. It'll say nothing is selected. You have to just leave work mode, wait a second, come back in, and it'll clear it for you. So if that happens to you, that's what you do. Okay, now that we've got our eave in, we can take that ceiling out and place our other ceiling in. And now we've got a wire going through the eave into our cycling light, and from our cycling light down to the wall that's going to go behind. Now our second snap point for the wall will be the back. Our wire is still connected, so now we can put it where it goes. And now the wire runs through from the cycling light through the wall to the conduit on the back side. Now here on the side of the build, we needed to add another electrical conduit. Basically, we're going to do the same thing that we just done. We need a wire to go from this conduit to a cycling light that's inside of the build. So we had to create two snap points for the wall where we could connect the wire to the cycling light, move it without it breaking. Once we've done that, then we're able to put the wall back in where it was at. I'm going to go ahead and move this stuff out of the way, so that way we have a nice clear snap point. Great, our wire is still connected, so that means now we can snap it back into place. And our wire is connected to the cycling light. Now at this point we can just go ahead and connect our two outside electrical conduits together. And we've already ran our power all the way up to and through our building. Now in the middle between the two buildings, I'm just basically going to rinse and repeat what we've just done. I'll put up two conduits on the side. We'll put one up in the middle, so that way we can connect our red rocket sign to it. And then we're just going to move the walls around until we can get all the wires to run through the walls and connect it to the cycling lights and the conduits. And now for our final tip in today's video, and that is these little beautiful little letters. I was trying to put some of these strobe lights on the bottom of this wall and they just wouldn't register or connect. So got out a couple of those little letters, put them in the corner. Sure enough, worked with it a little bit, strobe lights went right up. Looks great, should attract a lot of people our direction. Plus the build looks excellent. That alone really attracts a lot of people. Over the last month that we've been actually selling out of this location or this camp, we've generated somewhere around 100,000 caps or a little more over several different people. So don't think one of us is making all that money. Me, I'm broke. Probably like the rest of you guys too. We're broke. Alright everybody, thank you all for stopping in, hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next stream and or video. And just like always, until next time, please stay safe and peace.